Good evening, everybody. It's Sunday night, and it's Divided We Stand. We're usually on Saturday evenings, but couldn't make it last night, so
And why was that? Why couldn't you make it? Why don't you tell the
I'm
people
about
what
to
you were
tell
doing?
everybody. Don't pay attention to that voice behind me.
It was Brian's night to dance at the all-male nude bar. That's anything else he tells you is a lie. Go ahead. Where were you?
Okay.
Where were you last night, Brian?
I was in New Jersey. I was in Vineland, New Jersey, eating at a friend's house, a former Soviet citizen, somewhat, I don't want to say famous, but he was a brilliant scientist. And we were eating dinner at his place, discussing Soviet politics and Russian politics and American politics. So it kind of was interesting because it had a lot to do with what we were talking about last week with Navalny and the murder of Navalny. And it shows the importance of knowing what's going on, because this is obviously a direct threat to democracy, what's going on there and what's going on here. We're going to talk about that tonight. I do want to send one comment out to the Russian government, if they are watching, that we are never going to give up. We're going to be speaking freely, and we're not afraid of you. And my name is David Price, and I live in Virginia. We're going to begin now.
You wish your name was David Price, and you wished you lived in Virginia. And I wished you showed more support for our fan base because you just lied to them. You didn't see any Russians. You were dancing in that all-male nudie bar that you go to and frequent and dance. You know that's it. There's no other reason for it. You know, Trump lies, you lie. I can't handle it. Hey, Brian,
Okay.
what's up?
What's up? Dave, what's up? You know what? Quite frankly, Dave, I don't even know where to begin with this show, because there's been so, at least in my mind, there's so much going on in the news. And not only is there a lot going on, but at least from my state of tune, everything, well, they're telling me to turn the volume up. I have it all the way up, but I'll check again. I'm going to use my favorite program, loop back, or as Dave would say, broke back, or something like that.
That is correct.
All right. If anybody out there can tell us specifically, is it my volume or Dave's volume that is too low, or both of us? And then we'll begin from there. Joey, can you help us?
Well, it would probably help if somebody were talking so they could see what the
Well, they
volume was.
they should know
Yeah.
by now. I want to do it. Just
No,
wait.
no. You know, every week I have to guide you through what you have to do. Oh, well.
Now we have to always get the audio right.
Well, I agree.
And we have to get some response. I know there's a 30-second delay. Joey, are you there? Can you help us? He told us to turn the volume up. Now I'm waiting for him again.
Well, we could just sit here.
We could just stare at everybody for.
It's probably, it would be one if you did that. If you just stared at everybody, it would be your best show of the 205 that we've done. Be a great
Oh,
show.
for God's sakes! All right, anybody out there, anybody, not just Joey Fulcher, but anybody, if you can tell us whether you can hear us or not. I'm here. No, I'm saying not if you're here, but can you hear? Like HEAR? Hello, Divided We Stand. You've got to get this thing straight. This isn't Dave's fault or Brian's fault tonight. Or
It
maybe
is
Russia's
Brian's
already
fault.
doing something. Hello. Maybe they can't hear us. Can now. Okay, Joey. I think Joey's causing problems. I think everybody could hear us anyway, and he's just causing problems. All right, that's enough. Yeah, as I was saying, Dave, it's not just that there's so much going on, but of all these things that are going on, there seems to be one thread of evidence that we're heading in the wrong direction very, very quickly. Everything's seemingly spinning out of control. Maybe again, it's just my experience, but I would say at this point, I'm more nervous than ever about what's going on. I'll give you an example. First of all, we could certainly, and we will talk about all the events. Now, there was a person at work I was talking to, somebody who defends Ukraine, and I briefly mentioned in Russian, I said "Slava Ukraini," which means glory to Ukraine, and of course she agreed. But then she said, "Yeah, but I don't like all the corruption there," and that to me was like a dog whistle. That it was saying, even though I'm Ukrainian, I'm more Republican than Ukrainian because the minute you mention corruption in Ukraine, because we there's corruption anywhere, but that seems to be one of these outs for people who know that we need to support Ukraine in this war effort, but because of Trump, they have to find a reason, a scapegoat for disagreeing with Ukraine, even if they themselves are Ukrainian. And that bothers me because we are at the precipice of losing democracy there for sure. And not only there, but here. And we have so many people who are willing to support Russia, whether it's Tucker Carlson or just the average Republican. And as I was saying to Ronnie tonight, it's so obvious that no matter what happens, no matter what Trump does or he says, or what Tommy Tuberville says, what Tucker Carlson does, what Kyle Rittenhouse, it doesn't matter. They're all for it, and they want to destroy this thing. And all they have to do is bring it down in one shot, and then it's all over for us. And I was watching this movie last night. I don't know if anybody remembered it, but it was called Europa to Europa, and it showed, you know, it, the invasion of Germany. It wasn't the real invasion, but it was a movie that included that. And I was thinking, like this is giving me a foreboding feeling that I feel like this is 1939, and we're going to lose this thing here, and it's very easy. And you know how everybody in history has said, you've got to fight for freedom, you got to fight for democracy. Well, that's true even more so now. And again, that I can't lose that foreboding feeling, and it's kind of what you warned about probably a year and a half ago after we won the election. Like you would say, if you want to get scared about something, let's think about this. Well, that's come about, and even if we do win the election, if Trump knows that he's going to lose, his pollsters might say a week before or whatever it is, Don, you're not going to win this thing. So we've got to plan something. We've got to plan another January 6th type thing, and it's got to be even bigger. And he's going to have the support. I know this sounds like it's a conspiracy thing, but it's not. He's going to get the support from these assholes, the Tommy Tubervilles of the world, the Kyle Rittenhouses of the world, all the way down, you know, the ladder from up top to bottom. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, and I'm so thrilled that we went to create this enterprise here called the Budget because you have to do something. You have to do something. You can't passively sit. If you passively agree with something, you're part of the problem because you're not helping out. And this is where I need your help, Dave. Dave, I'm not joking. You as a former journalist, somebody who reads a lot, somebody who's, you know, always up on politics. You understand American history. Where do you stand right now compared to, say, 2.5 years ago where you gave that warning to us?
Let's see. I'm not surprised that Donald Trump is going to run again. I mean, that was inevitable. Anybody who thought that he would not run, was living in la la land. I'm not even mildly surprised about his support. It was clear that the Republican Party, as we knew it prior to, say, let's just pick a date. Let's say 2015, is not that party anymore. It's not the party of Reagan, for sure. It's something else. And, we've gone through the history of it. How did this come about? And, we can kind of follow it from actually from Goldwater in 64, Nixon in 68, Goldwater gave voice to the Birchers, the John Birch Society, which was the legitimate Klan of its time. We go through and then, we hit Reagan and we hit the Tea Party and we hit Newt Gingrich and Contract for America, and it keeps going. And the Republicans right now are simply Donald Trump's party. Okay? And of course, highlighting that was this week, just across the Potomac from where I live, at National Harbor, which is on the Maryland side. They had the big meeting that they have, CPAC, which is where all the conservative, come. And that was another coronation for Donald Trump. What I found interesting, though, the very opening remarks, or one of the opening remarks, was delivered by a gentleman who was instrumental in the famous made-up, Pizzagate scandal out of Washington. And he actually said these words: "We are out here to destroy democracy." I mean, so there's no pretense about it. What is scary is, and what I think, yes, we have this election. We don't know who will win it. I'm probably this week a little bit more optimistic about Biden winning than I was last week, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But it's still, we're a few votes away from losing democracy. You're right, Brian. I mean, there's, it's not something, and something. I mean, I don't fault myself, I guess, but I do think I did take democracy somewhat for granted, and even during the bad times. Certainly I was anti-Nixon, anti-Reagan, anti-Bushes.
Right.
But I still think there was it was still functioning. I like what there's a saying going around now, that we can, from Republicans who are anti-Trump, are saying, we can be okay with policies we don't agree with, meaning Democratic policies. But, what we can't be is we can't be anti-democracy. And Trump exactly is. Trump had an interesting week. First of all, he won South Carolina. Now, that was not unexpected. He won it at about the percentage that it was supposed to be. I think it ended up...
That's 60-40.
60-40.
Roughly.
Of course, people... people... This was Nikki Haley's state. She'd be the governor. It shows the power of Trump. Trump was able... Now, we don't know. We're not down there. And things change. I think Gary put it up a little bit ago, the idea of time, and, it's too early yet, but some things are becoming clear. So let's look at that first. What does that mean? It simply means that Trump is going to win. I mean, that's nothing. Now, the question that a lot of people are asking, and is why is Nikki Haley continuing to run, and what impact, if any, would have on that?
Right. I think that's the bigger question. What impact will her staying in affect?
And she has said that she will stay in at least till Super Tuesday.
Super Tuesday.
And she won't win anywhere. I mean, but does the fact that 40% of South Carolinians did not want Donald Trump, and then we get into that question. This is another interesting election. Are you more anti-Trump? Are you more anti-Biden? is Nikki Haley getting the anti-Trump vote? Is she getting the Nikki Haley vote? And let's face it, I mean, I would much prefer a President Haley than I would President Trump, but she's also not what I
Right.
want.
She's not what we really want, but right.
No, but
She's a smaller scar than he is.
correct. So I think what I focused on this week was some of Trump's remarks. Now, the man garbles the English language. Okay, there's no question about that. I love, they talk about stream. I mean, he actually speaks in stream of consciousness.
Yes, he's like a serious Robin Williams who's insane.
Yeah, and so let's just look at a few things that happened at CPAC. He comes along, and this is where we have to be careful in this age of social media. I don't know if you've seen the clip. Have you seen the clip that's being heralded as his calling his wife Mercedes, not Melania? Have you followed that at all?
I didn't. I know he's had some snafus, but that one I didn't hear.
And of course, that anti-Trump people jump on that. He doesn't even know his wife's name. Interesting defense of that I saw. And I think knowing how Trump garbles things and how he thinks it might be true. The actual head of CPAC this year, or the chairperson of the thing, was a woman by the name of Mercedes Schlapp. Now, he's doing this talk. I've seen it a few times now. And he's saying, the First Lady, she was great. She was loved. Everybody. She was a great First Lady. Yes, she was. And of course, everybody starts applauding and screaming for Melania. And then he says, hey, that's pretty good, isn't it, Mercedes? As if, and I really, I'm the last person, an American wants to defend Trump. But I do think probably, given the way he speaks, that he was not speaking about Melania, calling her Mercedes. He was calling out to the head saying, this is pretty good, isn't it? I'm here, that kind of thing.
Right.
But the point is, this is also going to be something else we have to be aware of, is the impact of social media, not on our opponents, on us, on each one of us. People were just jumping on that. And even if you want it to be true, if it isn't true, it shouldn't be true. Right? But there is one interesting thing he said there, and it ties in, of course, with America's concerns with Russia and Putin. He did say there, he said something, I'm not paraphrasing, but jumping into it. He was talking about Putin. He says, I get along with him well. Although he did say the other day that he much rather see Biden as president.
Right, and knowing that Putin's a lie, that is a perfect example.
But here it comes. Then it gets worse. So you have that, right? Then he says, just catching his breath, and I agree with him. Now let's breathe. He just said, if you look at that in any way, Putin, I know him, but he kind of dissed me because he said he wanted Biden as president.
Oh, I think that Trump's smart enough to know what he was doing there.
And I agree with him. I agree. Well, what do you think he was doing there? I mean, there's no...
Well, let's first clear the air.
Okay.
The Russian government fears any type of free press, any type of freedom. If you just look at the history of the Soviet Union, they've always had a better relationship with conservative Republicans, which seems counterintuitive, but they've had better relationship with conservative Republicans. So when he says that is an absolute, there is a typical piece of propaganda coming out of Putin's mouth. By far, he would prefer Trump, and he's saying that. He is just lying. So that's 100% a fact. Now, why would Trump say, I agree with him? One of my guesses, well, number one, he could have just said something absurd, just talked off the top of his head, extreme of consciousness. But my opinion is he's probably saying that to maybe confirm to people who are more liberal or people who do not side with Russia that perhaps he's the better one to choose against Russia, which is absolutely wrong. There's no doubt about that. I think that there's some bit of manipulation in that.
See, and I think he just doesn't. He speaks without thinking. Now, we have a race right now, unfortunately for all of America. The big question, or a big political question, is which old man running for president has more dementia than the other old man running for president.
But don't you think that's just a way to deflect from serious problems? Like that becomes the issue. It's like Gary Hart with a woman.
You're right, but we're talking about the American people. Look.
Right, and you're right, because that's the perception it's either that or immigration. Because it didn't really work with immigration now with the Republicans, because they scuttled the deal. So now they're going to go into the dementia thing.
Yeah,
I mean, they'll see Wendy Williams. Obviously Wendy Williams is having a real rough go of it. So now that whole idea of dementia, who has dementia? You start
and it gets people. Yeah, and of course, you can with AI now, you can and other tools, you can manipulate video, you can manipulate audio.
Do anything.
It has definitely been proven that there was an AI generated phone message going out in New Hampshire with Joe Biden's voice on it, with Joe Biden saying, "Don't vote now. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Just don't vote." Now, so at CPAC, it was a Donald Trump kind of grace. It's just a really good. If anybody wants to look at it, it's Donald Trump's week in 101 seconds, put out by the Lincoln Project, and some of those we'll talk about tonight. We'll probably won't talk about them all, but of course, he obviously had to campaign some in South Carolina. So he decides to go in South Carolina, interesting choice, to the Black Conservative Federation Gala, which is a get-together.
I assume Rick's, what's his name? Scott was there.
Now, again...
He's another winner.
Okay, so we look at the stage. It's Donald Trump, and there were 5 black men on the stage, including Ben Carson. Scott introduced
another winner. Yeah,
some people. But now again, it didn't pan the whole crowd and it didn't stay on there. But if you looked at what the crowd panning appeared to be, it was about 95% white people in the audience. Mm-hmm. Now, what's up with that, right? Is that? I mean, why would you call it the Black Conservative Federation Gala?
There's so many white people there. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's so. Anyway, then of course, to counter that, they interviewed 6 black people who were there, and that might have been the only 6 black people who were there.
Right. And then, of course, I'm sure they received some type of check or tickets to the next game.
Could have been, but of course, Trump, being Trump, has to just be Trump. Okay, right. So here's a quote I take out of this. This is my favorite out of there. He looks out, he does the thing he does, like this.
Right.
Hey, these lights are so bright in my eyes, I can't see people. I can only see black ones. I can't see any white ones. That's how far I've come. That's a long way, isn't it? What in the fuck
is he talking about?
Now, here's basically as I would interpret it. He was using this opportunity to say that he is gaining black America. He's indicated that he's gaining black America and Joe Biden is losing black America. Not true, but that's what he says. So, and he goes, I can't see people. I can only see the black ones. I can't see any white ones. But then he gets into that mind of his. That's how far I've come. What? He's now not racist? What's that mean? He's now, just because he looks out and only sees black people.
And that wasn't the only thing he said this week. That comment about the mugshot.
Well, I'm getting to that in a moment, okay. Yes. And 95% of the crowd, according to one estimate, was white. And he says, that's a long way, isn't it? I mean, does he really think that black America is going to fall for that? Now, your friends at Fox News, your favorite news network, had some interesting takes on that. They also have heralded that there's this great rush of black Americans to support Donald Trump. Not true, but of course, Fox is known for not being true. And one of their commentators said they'll support Trump because of sneakers. They really like sneakers. What?
Yeah, that's another wonderful thing to say.
How does that? Again, Donald Trump and company need to read Dale Carnegie's book, How to
So
Influence.
he's reduced the entire African American population to liking
to,
sneakers.
to liking sneakers. And
I
then,
haven't seen one African American person wearing his sneakers.
well, there's a reason for that.
And even if I mean, what it's so ridiculous to even say it about anybody. But
Well, Brian, what he does, he's a con man from the get go. So here's how those sneakers worked. Last week we talked about them briefly because they were just out like that day, right? They did have the $400 ones. They are apparently sold out. There are some.
they probably didn't produce many. To be honest with you.
Well, that's true. We only know of one person who bought a pair. Only one so far. The alleged, and that was wrong. The alleged Russian who wasn't really a Russian who bought it. I mean, we just this social media shit is just bad, whether it's on our side or their side. But anyway, these sneakers, there are some $200 pairs left. And as you said, Brian, I mean, he's last I knew, I mean, white people wear sneakers. I mean, it's just that is blatant racism to say that. And then he goes on to say that his mugshot is #1 T-shirt in the country, and the reason it is because black people are wearing them. Elvis is #2, he said. Of course, last week he said he looked like Elvis, so maybe he had that confused too. It's just amazing.
By the way, hi Veg, good to see you. He said they only made 1,000 pairs, so that was a very tactical
Right.
event.
But of those, the cheaper ones are not going to arrive until summer, and maybe never. So, again, it's Donald Trump did appear at SneakerCon. Did he really think that was going to gain him votes? Does he think that? And then he went on this week to say too that the reason black support is coming to him is the fact that they relate to the fact that he's indicted. So now he has indicated that they're sneaker loving.
And they somehow like transgressions of law.
Right. He said, quote,
of all people, by the way, who get are most affected by things like that. He's going to.
And he went on to say, the 4 indictments are the reason black people like me. A lot of people said that. And he went on to say, this is a direct quote, I'm being indicted for you, the black population. What? Yeah, you keep saying, what? So let's look at the figures, and we'll try to see where the truth lies. The last polls indicated of African Americans, and again, remember, every time on this show, when we talk about polls, we look at them somewhat askance because they're not, they can be, first of all, it's way too early in the race to start doing this. And I'm sorry, I still don't buy in the new age of polling. The polls have been wrong almost as much as they've been right. But anyway, we'll look at this one and see. Currently, it shows 79% of black voters favor Biden, and Trump is favored by 19%. That's a pretty big gap.
Absolutely.
Now,
and I would imagine that gap, when you have the 19%, even if that's somewhat true, which I don't know that it is true, we don't even know. Is it kind of isolated in certain states or in certain economic statuses?
And then you get, of course, what Trump can take a kernel of truth, or Trump's campaign. It is true that at the end of the campaign where Biden beat, or the election where Biden beat Trump, he tallied 87% of the vote and a black vote, and Donald Trump had 12%. Um, but I would hope black Americans would look beyond any of this and look at what his supporters are saying. His supporters came out this week, a couple of pretty big figures. I guess you call them influencers, MAGA influencers. One said, I get nervous if I see a black pilot. What? And of course, they're talking about DEI promotion and, not fairness, and they just get it because they're black, like affirmative action, right. As if no black person ever was capable of handling the job. And not to be outdone, another one chimes in and says, when you see a black surgeon, you question of, you get a question, really? I mean, so what we have to hope, Brian, and I think I put faith that black Americans will understand that Joe Biden, with all his faults that you might see, will be a better president than Donald Trump. Again, we already know that Trump is pledging from day one, if he wins, the largest immigration exodus in American history, forced exodus of driving immigrants out. Now, we know the border's a problem. I don't know if you followed this week, one incident, was one, and look, it's a tragedy. One person kills a tragedy. There was a young nursing student in Georgia was killed by someone who was an illegal Venezuelan immigrant. Now, we know that Venezuelans are coming over the border through Mexico, not in the thousands, but some. But the problem becomes Venezuela won't take them back. So, now I'm not saying this, but again, all these quick bites on social media don't go in depth to the whole thing. I don't want to say like Trump, good people on both sides.
And nor could most of the populace understand it if they had gone into depth.
Right. And that's
we're a country of memes now, one-liners.
Right. Now, of course, still going on this week, we've got Trump following up on things that have happened. I don't know if you saw it.
One last thing.
Sure.
Whether that's true or not, we don't know for sure. But it's kind of interesting when people say, "Well, how could 19% of the African Americans support Trump?" I think we could turn the question around and say, well, actually, that's not that bad. Number one, that 80% go against Trump, and we could ask the same question of white Americans, like, why is it 55% of you vote for Trump?
And I think if I had a theme right now, it's of course Trump is the enemy. We know that's true. But what I'm more concerned about is when Trump wins or loses, one of the two will happen, assuming he gets to run. What happens is Trump's Republican Party now the Republican Party for the rest of our lives?
Well,
that's the question.
Let's go into that for a second. And I talked about this tonight. What happens? Let's suppose the pollsters are correct, especially the Republican pollsters, because they have to know what to tell Trump. A month before, because I believe Trump knew this in 2020, because he kept warning about Philadelphia and this and this and that. And we know what he did throughout the states, because they're shifting everything to states. What happens the day after? Because already we've seen a shift from federal government to all states now. It's as if we have these 50, not 50, but we have all these red states operating as separate countries. Does he accept the election? No, he's going to accuse everybody of fraud. And then that's where the rest of them come into play. So even if Biden does win, which we want, the hell that we're going to have to deal with, because if they realize they can't win these elections, which kind of seems apparent at a national level, this is where it gets worse. This is where your fears triple and quadruple in that Biden wins, Trump knows it, so Trump automatically tries to inoculate himself from a
Well,
loss,
right. But
and then
I
they help
want to
Matt.
come back. That's a very good point, Brian. But I want to come back to that in a few
Okay,
moments. So I
absolutely.
want to get this out of the way. You know, the big news from the Trump trials. We've got still. There was another revelation supposedly this week where in the Fannie Wills, Nathan Wade
Hmm.
case, where Trump's attorneys or the other side's attorneys are saying that they have telephone proof
Right.
that Wade lied, and and again, um,
Could be AI too.
yeah, we don't know. I mean,
Right.
that's just it. We're this. We know we can't believe Donald Trump. We know we can't believe anything he says. We know that Republicans who support him will buy anything that he sells. But here's when you talk about money, this is real. They've tallied up what he owes in the civil case, that the judge just ruled on about his overinflating his properties. When it's all said and done, he owes four, roughly $4.55 million.
Million, or
Yeah,
are you talking about with the bond or
400.
something?
No,
400.
400. Yes, yeah, with the bond, with everything in there, because it was
Which he
three.
hasn't
What? Three,
received yet. Nobody, no company yet. This is where I think the Russians are going to help him out.
well,
Would the
hopefully we'll
Russians
be
be
able to
willing
see.
to give him a $500 million? I would say yes.
He has. Well, we'll know soon. He has 30 days to pay the money or place some of his properties in escrow. And his every day he's beginning now. He's being fined $111,000 a day.
But he's not paying it.
I understand that, but it's still up there. And what New York Attorney General Letitia James has said that she will begin to seize properties
Right.
to make that up, and that's legal. Okay, it's that's what they
But
do,
she has to put a lien on it, and that has to go through a process.
right? But but of course, again, it doesn't matter because Trump's supporters believe that he was framed anyway.
Right.
So, will it? Uh, it won't cause them to. He's a very good con man, and in fact, he probably wishes there were more charges than the 91 and more
You might as
indictments
well,
than
at this
before.
point, yes.
Yeah,
At this point.
because it in his mind, or in his presentation, if not in his mind, that's proof that he's being
Right.
railroaded,
And they go for it hook, line, and sinker. So
and they do.
even if Dave, even if it were true that he thinks that he knows I think he knows he's guilty. But let's suppose even if it were true that his followers know that he's guilty, it doesn't matter. And that's my
Well,
opinion. Again,
that's no,
I'm
you
just
no.
speculating. They don't care. They don't care.
That's not your opinion. That's truth.
Okay.
Okay, they do not care. Now, let's look at some of the things that again we're going to these polls. Caution, caution, caution polls. But the exit polls out of South Carolina, most recent primary, Republicans coming out said 2 out of 3, or 66%, believe that Biden stole the election.
Right.
Now,
By the way, the same people who think that Ukraine is corrupt
well,
and they are retreating
I
still,
understand
if they
that.
like Trump, right?
So, that number is a little frightening, and that supports your saying, which I said, is that it doesn't matter. Trump.
Well, it's evil versus good at this point, Dave. We can just, the common denominator, it's evil versus good.
Right. I mean, I would agree with you on that.
Right.
And Trump, we commented on before, had not spoken about the murder, which, okay, we can't say murder yet, the death. We
said
think
a
we
little,
know.
little bit. He compared
Well, no,
himself to Navalny.
exactly. That's exactly what he did. Finally, a week later, here's what he said. The sudden death made me more and more aware of what is happening in our country. Okay.
It's
Crooked
insulting.
radical left politicians, prosecutors, and judges are leading us down a path to destruction. Open borders, rigged elections, and a grossly unfair courtroom decisions are destroying America. We are a nation in decline, a failing nation, MAGA 2024. Now, what he doesn't even mention Navalny, except to compare his situation to
Right.
Navalny's.
He's
And
co-opting a hero
yes,
and
well,
making
and
himself the hero.
yeah, yeah, and you know what fascinates me? Uh, having dinner with or lunch with a friend this last week, and we're just talking about it, and you know, we're both kind of weird. I mean, it would just be fascinating. Not that it would change anything. I just like that 30 minutes. I'd even settle for 15 minutes alone with Donald Trump, just to see how his mind,
Right.
you know, and I wouldn't expect him to, to come clean and reveal. Now, you were talking before about what happens. I think we've got some indication of that. Have you been following it all? And it first of all, let me say this: if something were to happen as an insurrection or some, of course, it would be the military that would decide. If the
Right.
military went with Trump,
And they know that though. That's there's where it gets cloudy.
and if the military went with Biden, depending on how that
Right.
fell. Uh, but Trump has his supporters. Now, have you been following it all? Um, the proposed New York City truckers boycott.
I do know that there's still full shelves in New
Well,
York
that's made
grocery
everybody. Yeah,
stores.
everybody's. They're really some clever remarks. You're like, please help me, please help me. They're out. They're out of avocados. They're
Right.
not. They're right there. Um, Chicago Pete, who's become a real big time celebrity in this. God, is he terrible? But anyway, he calls it out. He kind of gets started. Then he backs off. Then he comes back in. But basically, about maybe 10 truckers have actually done that. Not that many more. And if you, I mean, of course, I wonder, quite honestly, in terms of violence, in terms of taking to the streets, how much support Trump would get
Well, that just
in
goes to
taking.
show you there's a clear indication. I mean, they have to actually think now, if I'm going to do this with my truck and I'm
Right.
going to New York, what's going to happen to me? There's a difference between saying, I'll do this and that, but when Mike Tyson's in the ring against you, and I only
Yeah.
mean that as a metaphor, you get to think twice.
Or they always say, all good plans work until you get punched in the mouth.
Right,
Then
that's
it's
what
time to
Tyson said. It was
improvise.
brilliant. I
Yeah.
mean, he's right.
That's right. Um, so Trump is Trump. We have to. There is some encouraging news that, again, whether it's accurate and whether it would actually happen, that if indeed he was found guilty on any serious charges, that there are people who wouldn't vote for him. But we don't know that. Okay, we do know. I mean, it's looking more and more that it may be tough to get a case in, except the money for sex, or money
Yeah.
for hush
Right. Hush
money for sex with Stormy Daniels.
You're not going to get anything out of Eileen Cannon. I mean, let's clear that one out.
And it has to happen before. But obviously we keep. But that's not all. Another thing you were talking earlier.
At least the pressure's still on, and he still has to, he has to pay his attorneys. Because I would assume
And
that his attorneys, are saying, we want money up front. We want a retainer here from you.
and as we know, you spoke earlier about the states, and
Right.
really we're getting
And that's my
to
big worry.
we're getting to two distinctions. We've got the red states and the blue states, which are completely different. There's very little makeup that's similar between them, and of course, at the forefront for a while now, past week or so, has been Alabama with their in
Where your
vitro
son lives,
fertilization.
correct?
Yes, in vitro fertilization decision. They put a fed now. They ruled, the Supreme Court of Alabama ruled that frozen embryos outside of the womb are considered minor children. No. Uh, Even Trump and some of the other politicians have kind of
Right.
distanced
They ran
themselves.
away from it.
They
That's
ran
what they
away from
do.
it. They didn't. Um, but I think again, there's three worrisome things there. Number one is the rationale that one of the judges used. Now, remember, this is a supposedly the highest judge, or the uh, you know one of the most prestigious judges in the state of Alabama, says, ruled, even before birth, all human beings bear the image of God, and their lives cannot be destroyed without
It's
effacing
kind of the other way
His
around.
glory. So anybody who thinks that there's not a movement for theocracy is wrong. It's here. We're not a theocracy yet, but there's certainly, when you have William
Depends on the
Johnson,
state, too.
yeah, but when you have William Johnson, who supports theocracy as third in line for the presidency, when you have Alabama judges ruling this way, uh, and I think, obviously, proponents of women's rights are saying, okay, IVF decision up next. They're pushing a federal ban on abortions, and they're concerned that birth control may be next. Certainly, if I were a female, I have a granddaughter, so I worry about this. I mean, women in general, um, I think they have to look and study and really try to understand that a Trump presidency or Republican takeover is not going to be good for them. Um,
Oh, by the way,
so
can I add a little note? Just because
sure.
I am somebody who cares about the animals. If you want to, not you, Dave, but if they want to go this route about talking about abortion, about killing, well, there's a holocaust in their stomachs every dinner. I mean, you get slaughterhouses of things being killed, and just because they believe that they have dominion over them, they're killing. So if you want to go by the
Well,
law of the word and the
it's
word of the
kind of
law.
it's kind of the way I view this is rape is a crime of hideous power. It's not really about sex. I mean, if it is, it's distorted and disabled sex. I think it's the same thing. Uh, when they make these kinds of
Well,
rulings,
if it was simply about sex, why wouldn't the rapist go to a house of prostitution?
because it costs. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, I don't mean to make light of it. But
You know what
I
I'm
mean, really,
saying? You see, there is a
yeah.
psychological difference there.
Oh yeah. Um, so we talked a lot about Trump. So let's focus on Mr. Biden, and this is where I get some encouragement. I guess you saw where the impeachment of Joe Biden is just about falling out.
Right.
It was based on lies propagated by Russia.
Right. And the Russian, he's trying to get out of the country too. He's trying to
Right.
flee.
Well, they actually refiled more charges against him, so he's probably gonna have to do something
Well,
there.
let's hope that they keep. We hope they'll be able to keep him here because he needs to be put away,
Well, no question about
or a
that.
bargaining chip to get all of our
But
hostages from Russia.
but again, a theme that we've echoed consistently is no politician is perfect. No politician can line up with all your values. Usually, I mean, I can't. I've never had one. I've never
Right.
seen one in my lifetime, be it local or national. And so you have to look at who's best for me, who's best for my own. Um, yeah, Anthony. I mean, in some ways, there's been an argument that it may even be worse in terms of life because a rape survivor survives
And has
and
to
is
live with
scarred,
it the rest of their
and
lives.
and,
Right.
and is scarred, and of course, not. Um, so one of the areas that's really being focused on right now, one of the states we talked about Alabama, but Michigan, where it was been close, it is considered a swing state. It has one of the largest Arabic populations in America, and they're campaigning against Biden because he won't call a ceasefire or won't. They consider him pro-Israel. Um, I find it interesting. Again, there's no rhyme or reason to what the MAGAs think. They say Donald Trump kept us out of wars, and Joe Biden put us in wars. I mean, Joe Biden he has to react to them as president.
Mhm.
But that I mean, it's like everything. Something good happens for Biden, something bad happens for Biden, and there seems to be
Well,
some
there may be some truth in the fact that he kept us out of war, but only because most of the fascist states or the theocratic states like him, so they things everything's hunky dory. So when
yeah.
things don't go your way, and then there is this idea of freedom, like let's have you know governments that represent the people and not terrorists or whatever.
Well,
This is something that puts fear in many leaders. So
did you?
it gets back to how we started the show.
And it's interesting. They had a repeat this week came out. If you remember, during the last election, people were wearing MAGAs were wearing T-shirts. I'd rather be Russian than a Democrat.
Correct. Right.
And I think at the time, they want Trump. They want him to be powerful, and they really don't care. I mean, they really see the only way you can have democracy is if their guy or their woman.
I'm going to add to that, Dave, because I
Go ahead.
don't want to lose this one. But there was a very conservative couple. Now this is Canada. This is not the United States. So,
Right.
Veg, you've probably heard about this. But there's a couple in Canada who's very, very anti-LGBTQ. So they said, we're sick of Canada. We're going to live in Russia.
Russia.
It lasts 2 months and they're dying to get out. They want to go back to Canada. I don't know that Canada wants them back, but that's the reality. Now they understand once you set foot in there and realize what you're up against.
What I worry about a little bit too is this. Joni Mitchell at age 80 just came out and performed. And she's
Grammys.
she's one of the most talented female songwriters, definitely. And her line from Big Yellow Taxi, you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Right.
I think if Donald Trump wins, I think there's going to be a lot of that. I didn't think. I'd rather be dead than red.
Right, which was saying, look, we had the McCarthy hearings to go against Russia. If anything, half of them will be put up there. But you're right, Dave, is when you lose it. But will that make us feel any better when we see them facing it?
No,
I don't know that I'll get that.
The question becomes if. I mean, we'll save this for another show because the clock on the wall is saying it's getting near that time.
By the way, it's very freaky with Canada because maybe Alberta is kind of like their Texas. You wouldn't expect it, but this is the warning that could even in Canada, like the most liberal country that we know of, there's still that element. They're not that much different.
Well,
it's frightening.
Yeah, it is. I think what. Let's see. Yes. Jeff, you're absolutely right. And that's the problem. I think the founders, despite what the right wing says, they were smart enough to get separation of church and state. And I think, maybe after the rights of the, and it's in the First Amendment, okay? The idea, who's church, who's God, and when you have the multiplicity that we do of religions. Oh, the other thing, Don, I forgot this. Donald Trump said this week, there's all these languages. They're speaking language. Nobody in America knows what these languages are. Really? Somebody in America knows what, but it really is. I mean, he campaigned. What he's done, he's a great con man. He's also tapped into one of the most powerful emotions in human beings, fear. And that's basically what he's running on.
And selfishness, perhaps you could add that.
Well, that's true, but of course people don't see
it's actually hip to be selfish.
Yeah, true. Of course, that gets also
Well,
we get it,
but we keep bringing up Trump, and we keep bringing up the Tommy Tubervilles, but gets back to the people you know, Dave, the people I know, and
I know.
those who, these people, these are fucked up people, and you say, oh shit, it's all coming to a head now. Like,
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, um, I check social media a couple times a day just to do it. But Facebook has the memories. They
right,
take you through different. And it's interesting when I go back and see what I posted. And back when I actually had Facebook friends, I never liked that term. Facebook did because friends sound like there's a bond. It should have
right,
been
and they give
people
a
that
number too, how many friends you
people
have. It's a badge
people
of honor.
people that I can kind of know. But looking back on those when I was still conversing with Trumpites before they either dissed me or I dissed them, um, to see, to look at it and say, is it worse now or better now than it was then? And it's worse.
Sure.
The stakes are higher. Uh, it, it's really, and again, we use like kids. It's awesome. It's, we overuse sayings. We overuse, this is the most, and they've used it before. This is the most important election in your lifetime. I think
Well,
we're going to
2020
pull off.
was, but now,
But that's what I'm saying. 2024 is even more now.
right.
So we'll have to see. Well, Brian, as always, let's see what maybe they're coming from North Sentinel. I don't know if anyone speaks that. Tell Trump they want him as king. Let him visit. Yeah, that's. Well, you know what, Jeff? I think Donald Trump would love to be king, but I think his goal is to be king of America.
Right.
And I really, I just don't get, like I said, I've only had 3 occasions to be in Donald Trump's presence. Once I watched him when he was still had a casino in Atlantic City. I watched him stop a James Brown concert and come up and talk. I saw him once speaking with every Looney Tune, including the Duck Dynasty guy and Sarah Palin at this right-wing thing and on the steps or outside the Capitol. And I saw him at a rally in Atlanta when he was running against Hillary. And it's just so obvious, if you, if you don't believe it, go see him. I mean, it's like, wow.
Well,
what is this
the
guy?
Hunter Thompson quote that I love, and I'm sure you love it too, is about
Yeah.
when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. This is essentially what's happened. They've taken it to the degree that like you said, we won't get this thing back. Even if we win the election, we can't. How do you? I mean,
I don't
even
think
with a strong victory, how do you have them change?
I don't think you do. I think you have to outvote them. If you can't if it becomes to that, I still don't see a civil war the way we knew the American Civil War. Right. But I can see eventually where if they push the states and, that kind of thing, where suddenly, maybe we will have separate, I don't know, separate countries within America. I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, who the hell would stop a James Brown concert? Donald Trump would. It was his casino. He stopped it, came out, talked, and James Brown wasn't a real happy guy, but Donald was. I mean, I hope Donald paid his bill. He didn't pay his construction workers, but I hope he paid his entertainers. Well, Brian, a clock on the wall.
Yeah, it says it's time.
Says it's time. So again, I'd like to thank everyone who viewed this, whether you're viewing it live,
Please share, folks. Please share.
or whether you're seeing it later. And I don't think we'll have any problem finding things to talk about in our
We won't.
206. So one of the things I've been researching a little bit, so maybe I'll deal with it next week, is what happens. You've got these 2 candidates who are older, okay, and we know that older people, may be more prone to certain ailments and illnesses. And what happens if one or both aren't around? And what I'm discovering is there are stages of that. Yeah, Trump had a brand new bag. Yeah, he did.
Well, Dave, I mean, I know it's the end of the show, but people die, and there are remedies for people dying, including presidents.
Well, that's what I want to
That's why
talk
we have
about.
a vice president.
But it's very interesting because there's like I didn't, there's like 4 stages of what could happen, right? Depending on when that would happen. So again, thank everyone. Have a good week, and we'll be back next week, unless Brian has to dance at the
Okay.
all-male nudie bar where he
Okay.
dances. Usually he doesn't dance Saturday nights, but he did this week. Don't let him tell you he went out with Russian friends. That's not true. He was dancing in that nudie bar, and you don't want to see the live video.
And I'll end with Russia again. If you can hear me, I'm going against you. And I don't care what you do. My name is David Price. From Virginia. All right. Dave, sleep with one open wide, okay?
Take care, guys.
Okay, see you, Dave.